With respect to the income tax, and I would want, in the current libertarian platform, it says that we want to abolish the income tax. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. There's nothing to abolish. I sell the Internal Revenue Code. I'm probably the nation's leading retailer of Internal Revenue Codes, and I color code it, and I give you 2 pages of instructions on how to use it, because there is nothing in here that says anybody has to pay income taxes. But if you go into an IRS audit situation with an Internal Revenue Code, this is like holding up a cross to a vampire, because this is the law. I have a talk show in Las Vegas, and he heard 2 hours on Wednesday night, and we got about 30 calls. All of them were supporting. And for the last 4 months in Las Vegas on my own radio show, I've offered to pay $5,000 to anybody who can identify any law that says you have to pay income taxes, and nobody called, even though I can pick up the Internal Revenue Code, and these are all the red, every one of these red flaps here show another tax that's required to be paid in the code itself. But there is no tax. There's no income tax that is required to be paid, which means this issue goes beyond the issue of taxes. It means for the last 50 years, the entire federal establishment has been engaged in a monstrous fraud and have been actually putting people in jail for violating laws that don't exist. There are no penalties in here with respect to income taxes. I don't know. I sell this. Okay, now, what does that mean? It means the entire federal judiciary should be replaced. The biggest collection of criminals in this country are sitting on the federal bench. They've been putting people in jail illegally. They've been allowing the IRS to seize property illegally. What the government does in many cases, they'll charge somebody with tax evasion and then tell him if he doesn't, which is a felony, but offer him he'll plead guilty to a misdemeanor, which is willful failure to file, or else they're also going to charge his wife with a felony. And I've heard people who pleaded guilty to willful failure to file because they didn't want their wife to also be charged with tax evasion. That's how your federal mafia operates. On a 1040 booklet, there is no mention that you got to file a 1040, nor is there any mention of what law requires you to pay the tax, nor is there any mention of what law makes you liable, because there is no such laws. If the government were required to collect taxes pursuant to the 3 clauses in the Constitution, they couldn't collect 95% of the taxes they collect now, because all direct taxes have to be apportioned, which would make it almost impossible for the government to collect legally the income tax, because it would have to be apportioned, and I could explain what that means, but they could never do it. The income tax affects every American worker, and every week money is being extorted from him. As a matter of fact, a lot of people tell me, Irwin, I know you're right, but I'm afraid not to pay the tax. They say that. And I say, wait a minute, then it's not a tax you're paying, it's extortion you're paying, and you're paying blackmail. Well, say I want to pay the blackmail. I can understand that, but don't call it a tax. There is no such thing as an income tax, because the definition of a tax is a mandatory extraction for the support of government, and there's nothing mandatory about the income tax. And the word income itself is not even defined in the Internal Revenue Code, and the Supreme Court has defined it as a corporate profit, and that's what the word income means. It means a profit, and nobody out there is a corporation, so nobody has any income that's subject to the income tax. And if you think government is so terrible, you're supporting it voluntarily, because there's no law that says you got to pay an income tax. Now, I can understand you're saying, but I'm afraid. Okay, then pay it. But admit that what you're doing is submitting to extortion. I can understand that. If someone had a store someplace, and he's paying $200 a month to the mafia so they won't blow it up, I can understand that. I have no problem with that. Even the government admits income tax is voluntary. Every government document says it's voluntary. Well, it's voluntary. How can you put people in jail for not volunteering? The illegality with which the government has been collecting taxes from the American public, and if the government can lie about that, what else is it lying about?